Fantastic. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. Come in, help yourself find a seat. Welcome. Oh, really happy you could join us this evening. Also want to welcome our friends that are joining us through our online and Zoom colleagues. So thank you for joining us for the live stream. My name is Greg Hull. I'm the Dean of the Herron School of Art and Design. Really excited you could be here with us this evening. It's going to be a great talk, and it's going to be a really exciting evening as we open 2 exhibitions. But thanks again for being here. I'd like to take this moment to acknowledge that we're gathering this evening on the ancestral lands of the Miami, Potawatomi, Shawnee, Lenape, and other Native peoples of the past and present. We also acknowledge that IUPUI displaced the African-American business and residential neighborhoods of Indiana Avenue and Ransom Place in the 1960s. We honor those who have cared for this place in the past, and we hope sincerely that its current use for the pursuit and sharing of knowledge and understanding, which are goals of the university, will lead to a future that is more equitable and just. Before we begin our panel discussion, I'd like to share that complimentary parking is made possible this evening by the Great Frame Up of Indianapolis and Carmel. If you're parked in the parking garage, you can get parking validation codes from the gallery team, from the Berkshire Reese and Paul Gallery, which is right over here. If you have any questions about that, please feel free to ask us. I'm excited to invite you to stay after the panel discussion this evening to join us for the openings of 2 exhibitions. Connecting Distances, which will be down the hall in the Marsh Gallery, and Give and Take, which will be in the Berkshire Reese and Paul Gallery, which is here, and the Basile Gallery. I'd also like to share that the Give and Take exhibition is made possible by the generous donations and support from Art Bridges and STACK, the Everson Family Foundation, and the Crystal DeHaan Family Foundation. We're very grateful. I'd also like to take a moment to thank our gallery team and everyone involved in making tonight's talk and gallery openings possible, including our friend and former gallery director, Paula Katz. And now it's my sincere pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague, Oliver Hildenbrandt, Herron's new interim gallery director. Oliver will share more about our exhibitions that open tonight, and he'll introduce our 3 panelists. So if you would, please help me welcome Oliver to the stage.
Hello, everyone. I'm Oliver Hildenbrandt. It's good to see you all tonight. Thank you so much for coming out. I really appreciate it. I'm going to jump right in and chat about a bit about Give and Take, and just try to focus in on my phone here because I forgot to print out my notes. I'm really excited about this show. It tells multiple stories of transformations that are larger and more profound than those contained within the sole work of art. Each artwork on view triggers one of the 5 senses, inviting you to participate in their activations and ultimately their inception. Historically, art has always been a one-way, vision-centric experience. Give and Take is suggesting multiple itinerations of the artwork as it remains present and alive in its ever-evolving state, before, during, and after this exhibition takes place. Expression and the symbols that comprise it give us access to each other's perceptions, dreams, and realities. Give and Take as an exhibition provides a safe platform from which we can freely enable the artist and you, the participant, to connect on sensory levels through gestural cues and action. This is an exhibition sought to commemorate our place in history and propose new directions for us to go along with the artwork, showcasing unique juxtapositions and reflecting our current touchscreen everything environment in which internet-based communication, social media, and now artificial intelligence have become dominant forces. Give and Take celebrates the importance of this physically embodied encounter with art and with one another. So please feel free to cross that line, to do more than just look, and to get physical with these works of art and to have some fun. Constance, thank you so much for coming. It's a real pleasure to finally meet you. And I hope I pronounced your last name correctly. Skopelitis? Will that would work? Okay. I'm gonna share, I just want to make sure, you know? So Constance's collection of touch screens and lenticular paintings are an arrangement of allegories for narratives seldom contained within this type of work. As you can see in their twitching in their own undulating fashions, yet somehow very still, Skopelitis has created a new artistic medium, the screen as a canvas. The colorful forms pop and the flowers boom in a seemingly flattened space as they are built up with layers upon layers of images, becoming an approximation of the arranged image chosen ultimately by you. Jamie Paulus, thank you so much for coming out. It's nice to meet you as well. The visceral and colorful collaboration between Jamie Paulus and the chromatic collective Space Raiders Launch Zone invites you to formally check out the artwork and take it on a date. The artwork here is an artsy fleet of tricycles, custom made and designed especially for you, for removing you from the gallery, to physically explore the outside space, and to reflect upon the artwork taking you along for the ride. April Knauber. It's nice to meet you. Thank you for coming. April Knauber's Blow Me makes you wonder about the performance of nostalgia and its impact on the present day. The gumball machine, an interesting found object, stands alone on a pedestal, as if with an abstract smile, seemingly to offer the promise of something sweet. And then there's the reclaimed school chair, existing solely as a container for pieces of discarded gum, standing alone as a sculptural testament to this playful experiment. I would like to now introduce these artists more formally. We have Constance Skopelitis here on the left. I'm sorry, you're far right. I'll get it. This is Constance Skopelitis, and then in the middle, we have Jamie Paulus, and then on the far left, April Knauber. And now I would like to invite them to just chat briefly about their art practice so we can understand where they're coming from and where they're going, and then move on a bit about how you concepted and created this interactive work made especially for this exhibition. And then finally, just finish up telling us like how you feel about making interactive work, sharing the process from inception to completion with individuals who visit the exhibition. And I'm not going to moderate, I'm just going to let them have fun and chat with us and share this experience if that's okay with everyone. Is that cool? Yeah? With you, the artist. Thank you. Yeah, I believe you should start, Constance.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry.
Does it work? Okay, thank you. I feel like interactive work was positively inevitable. And it started for me, it was a necessity because I was doing these big, dare I say, obscene, to a certain extent, art shows down in that Miami market. And I realized this about 12 years ago that the human attention span was really reduced to about 3 seconds. And I was just stunned and depressed even, and shocked and kind of pissed off, like, why can't you see that I'm trying to tell you something? Can't you stop from, pause and take in what I'm trying to tell you? But it's too much competition, too much glut of art, and frankly, too many people who think they're artists. Okay, that's another whole controversial subject. But but I thought if I really, I come from I consider myself to be a content-based narrative artist. I feel like I have something that I need to say, I want to say, and I would like people to get the message or read it or just pause long enough to to think a little bit. If you don't like my message, I don't care about that, but at least get people to stop for a moment. So I thought the best way to do that was to invite the viewer to actually participate with the art. If somebody is invited to put their hands on art, like with my touchscreen interactive pieces, at least you'll stop for 10 seconds. And then I've got an opportunity to maybe get my message to you. I'm highly motivated by psychology, sociology, politics, social justice, and probably started on that jag deeply and mostly after Trayvon Martin's murder and the lack of gun policy reform in America. So for me, I felt like I just wanted to get the message across that, you know, what are we valuing and what the heck are we doing? We're doing nothing. So anyway, a lot of my body of work has to do with a response to a big issue like that. Well, after interactivity and I was doing the touch screens, COVID hit us. And then all of a sudden, touching art became kind of yucky, like germs and cooties, you know, and like, so I had to draw back from that for a few years. And I thought, let's go back to a medium that's two-dimensional, it's hanging on the wall, but there's something within that that still can draw you in without you having to touch it. That's what led me to the lenticular prints that I do. That is where I take my original artwork and it's photographically reinterpreted through computer depth mapping, they call it. And I've created a situation visually where there's foreground, middle ground, and deep background that zooms out into the room at you. So it's trippy. So once again, it's a way to get people to, if they're going to walk by real quick and then they realize, whoa, you know, maybe they'll stop for a little while. And then ultimately in this show, I decided it was time to, since AI is out of the genie bottle, let me see what I can do with that. And I've really been, I'll think of a good word, but here's what I'm trying to say about AI. AI is really good at certain things, but boy, is it bad at interpreting artworks or visuals. It was so life art affirming for me to see that I could tell what the original artwork is next to the AI interpretation really easily, because AI can be funny as all get out, but and entertaining, but it's so plastic. You know, the artwork that comes out looks like as smooth and slick as a Barbie Ken doll. So that was just nice to find out that where the artist, I don't think, the artist's hand, the artist's heart, soul, gut, meat on the bone really can't be outdone by AI. So. Okay, that's enough for now. Somebody else.
That was good. Just kind of, I don't know what to do with myself. So I have been doing public art for quite a while now, and I didn't get into it just because public art, but because it's my self-help. It's like I use it as a tool to be more comfortable in public spaces. And so I guess I had a tendency just to go out when I was out in public spaces, I would just want to flee from it. And so this is like an anchoring. Each piece that I do is an anchoring, and then it comes with like it's always has to be some kind of personal experience that happens. Otherwise, it doesn't work out somehow. People don't care about my work if it's just something I just kind of made up. But if it comes from some kind of awful personal experience, it ends up being better somehow. So just kind of crappy that way, I guess. I'm kind of envious of people that don't have trauma, you know. Anyway, with this particular project, it starts out with like a year ago. Yeah, exactly a year ago. I had a very traumatic, awful experience happen to me. And then shortly after that, my father died. And I kind of pretty much have a mental breakdown. And right around that time, after like shortly after that, Paula Katz approached me and wanted me to do this and be in the show. And I was just like, okay, but I've got a lot of mental issues right now, and I don't know, how much I can handle at this time. I'm a very low functioning person right now. And so she was like, she's a good friend of mine too. She was like, I'll help. I'm like, okay, great. And so I, it didn't take me very long. I went home and then I contacted her because, and said to her, would you like to be in a big wheel gang with me? And she, because I'm nuts. And she was like, is that what you want your project to be? And I was like, yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's why I contacted you, because it's my idea. And so then, in her helping me, she was the one like who looked and found the big wheels that were perfect. And then she contacted Chromatic Collective. Are you guys here? Back there. Nice to meet you. Thank you very much. Which they're amazing. They did some amazing work, but what was happening was like when I was going through this kind of trauma, it's like right after my father died, I was just like, I just kept visualizing myself taking off on a big wheel. Like as a child, I just saw myself I kept fleeing. So I was just, that is big wheels. I love them. I actually loved riding my big wheel when I was a little kid. And I just kind of wish I could be on that and not deal with any of the stuff I was thinking about and just ride off on my big wheel. So I totally tricked out a couple big wheels and Chromatic Collective, tricked them out too, and Space Razors. So would you guys like to be in my big wheel gang with me? Cool. So you guys are going to be able to go in there and take them out for a spin, and careful. That's about it.
So a lot of my pieces aren't interactive, actually. Blow Me was one of the very first interactive pieces I ever made, and one of the last ones I ever made too. But when I first made this piece, it was in 2017, and I was a sculpture student here. And I was trying to find my voice as an artist. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make something that I've never made before that I just think is fun and funny, and something that's fun to do with my other classmates. And from there, I feel like it really influenced my current practice with ready-mades. I use ready-mades a lot in my current practice. And my current practice is mainly about colonization, immigration, and classism within my culture. I'm Filipino American, and how these things can't exist without being inside of each other. And it's always, my research is constantly developing as I dive deeper into history, my family's history, and like what I've entailed being first generation to America. And a lot of my piece in the show, Blow Me, and having like using ready-mades, I feel like almost ties into how I grew up being a child of an immigrant, being Filipinos, using things that are already around you. And as I look farther into my practice, I was like, oh, like within classes, and a lot of materials are very expensive for art students. Materials are very expensive outside of, like, if you don't have the money. And I was like, what are materials that are accessible? It's like, oh, well, I had a friend who gave me the ready-made, who just had it in their parents' garage. A lot of the pieces I work with are concrete, and you can get a bag of concrete for like $5 and make like 17 Orlon concrete paintings if you wanted to, rather than buying canvas or more like materials that are more expensive. And with this piece, like I said, with this current piece I have in the show, it was really the first step of my current practice. Even if the concepts might be different to what I'm doing now, I really feel like this was a jumping off point for me. It's like, I'm going to use what I have, things that are affordable, gums, pretty cheap. It's like $2 a packet. It was like $1.25 when, what, 7 years ago now. And also the idea of using multi-sensory pieces is something I want to look forward to in my current practice. Also, I've been working a lot in video art right now. And I feel like I went to a talk here with Anne Hamilton, and Anne Hamilton said, sound is touch from a distance. And I was thinking, well, so is smell, so is sound, things that you might not touch. And how can we incorporate those things into my pieces right now? Which is kind of what I've been focusing more on. And as I'm sharing this piece, I started thinking more about my practice in the long run and how can I incorporate that more as I further my concepts of colonization, immigration, and classism within the Filipino community and within US history. Also in our current environment, it's constantly changing. But I'm very excited to show this piece. I feel like this is one of my most infamous sculptures I've ever made. The title's Blow Me. You just chew gum and stick on it. I've had people be like, you should burn this, or be like, this is amazing. So I feel like any reaction is a good reaction. As Constance was saying, it's like, I want some people to feel something when they see my artwork. And I feel like Blow Me is such a universal sensation. You feel like we all remember being children touching gum underneath our desk. And if you didn't, you were very lucky to never have gum in your hair. But yeah, that's me.
Thank you all very much. Well, yes. Would we want to do a casual Q&A so we can ask the artists questions? Would that be fun? Okay, let's do it. We have a fun like traveling microphone and a speaker box. And so please just raise your hand and go for it. Let's dive right in. Anyone? Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Ready to catch?
Okay, I'm just talking into a box. This is cool. I had like a material question about like I love lentricular art and just like the old postcards and stuff. And I think Elias was saying one of yours is like 90 layers or something. And I'm just like curious if you would talk more about the material and making side of that, because like seems like a difficult thing to make.
Sure. Lenticular is a fancy word, I think, for what we all remember being in the Cracker Jack box when you were a kid, where you might get a little flip card, you know. You can go to CVS or any drugstore and the greeting cards where, you know, it's a pug and then it flips to a pug in a tuxedo, whatever, you know, it can be seriously trite, but the artwork, when I first started seeing lenticulars in the big art fair shows and all that, I thought they were still kind of treating it very tritely, if that's a word. For example, there was a very controversial piece that I saw one year where it was a woman from head to toe in the black burqa and just the tiny little weave across her eyes. But as you crossed by the artwork, she became completely, utterly naked. And I mean, it was a dangerous piece. I think the artist had to stop showing up to the event, you know, because that's just a cultural no-no. And then there's the artists who think it's really interesting to use lenticular where you stand in front of the piece and it's an image of Basquiat with his fabulous hair. But if you walk by it, it turns into Warhol with his crazy ass hair, you know? Well, okay, I mean, so what? So I work with this company up in, or a studio in Detroit. These guys are really cool. They get me. They know what I'm trying to do. And I said, there's got to be a way to use all those layers without it just being a single flip from one image to another. And so then they started teaching me about this depth mapping computer program where I start with my original artwork, which is almost always a drawing. I feel like that's my kind of master work. And then I grab free images like almost free images like a whore off the web, you know, grab everything I possibly can and then stick it into my, my serious side. And we create these Photoshop files that are just layers and layers and layers. And I meticulously decide what do I want to be in that really zoomy foreground? What do I want to sit back? What do I want to push way back to the back? And I feel like I'm using lenticular in a way that's a little different and it feels very satisfying. I've only made like 8 images so far. And I'll continue to play with that, if that's a credible word. Does that give you any extra? Yeah, I pay big money for that.
Boom. Thank you. I want to thank all 3 of you. It's really exciting to have you here and really grateful for everything you do for our community and beyond. Just adds to the excitement, what you do, what you're used to do. I wanted to ask if you would share for a moment just your relationship. Each of you have had an experience, a relationship with this school, with Heron School of Art Design. What if you'd mind just telling us a little bit about your experience as you'd worked with the school in the past?
About where we came from, is what you're saying? Well, I went to Heron a really long time ago. And I went in actually to be in graphic design. And I loved it a lot. I learned a lot about how to move around text and things like that. I loved graphic design, but my instructors kept telling me that, yeah, you're great, but you're never going to get a job doing that. So I stuck with it just because I liked them so much. And then I ended up, we had to take photography classes for graphic design. And then I did that. And then I just became amazed at the installations that the photography students were doing. So I got really interested in installation art. And then what did I do? Oh, and then I started going into printmaking because my boyfriend was in printmaking. And I wasn't very good at it, but I ended up going with him to graduate school after that. But oh, and then I came back and started teaching with Greg and Eric and sculpture because when they when they hired me, the day that they were hiring me, they're like they were so cool. But I said, you do realize I never took a sculpture class in my life, right? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, okay. Anyway, it was like that part was the greatest learning experience of my life. I just learned so much, so very, very quickly so that I could teach it. And then it moved in, and then my work became more 3-dimensional and even further. And yeah, thanks.
So I also, well, we all went to Heron, it sounds like. I graduated in 2019 in sculpture, and I have a minor in art history. Uh, but yeah, I loved being in sculpture. I was originally a art history declared before I started, and then they gave me the syllabi, and I was like, oh, that's a lot of writing. I was like, so I was like, oh, I think I'm just gonna do a BFA, and then I forget I was in my 3D class, and we were making these bamboo skewers, and my professor was like, it was a really minimal one, and he was like, this one's great, and the whole class erupted. And I was like, it's just like 4 sticks and that's it. It's not chaotic. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go into sculpture now. And I would do it all over again if I could. I love the sculpture department here. I had Greg and Eric as my professors, the golden years. No, I'm just saying. But yeah, it was really great. I really had a great experience here. I went to a high school in a high school in the middle of a cornfield, and I was the only one who graduated and went into art practice. So I felt like I found my community here, and I made lifelong friends being here. And I would say everyone here who's a student now, it's like take advantage of all their facilities here. Your professors are like wells of knowledge. And like I said, like if you have good relationships with your professors, with your peers, they want to see you being successful. I see Nick Witten making a face. They want you to be successful as long as you want to be successful also. So yeah, take advantage of it. It's great. Go to your studios, stay in the studio as long as you can, and then go out, get drinks with other artists, bounce ideas off, have fun. It's a really great school. And like I said, I would do it all over again if I could. I might get my MFA somewhere else just to expand my network. But I will always come back to Heron. Nothing but good things to say about it here. Oh, also I was a gallery manager here for a year as well before I work in my current position at the museum across the street. But it was great. At the Idols York Museum. I was at the other museum.
My experience is different with Heron because I was a scholarship kid for Saturday school. And it literally changed, transformed my little life. I was actually raised by wolves in Irvington. And there was no way I was going to stay in Indianapolis and go to Heron because I had to get out of town. I had to get out of Dodge. So I went to art school down at IU. But I forever love, appreciate, and can get very emotional about how that Heron Saturday School altered and really transcended my life as a little kid with not many resources and crazy childhood. It was a place where I could think bigger, think of other things, I don't know, it just I had a good elementary art teacher too. It was my success in school to be to have some art speak and be able to make art and all that. And so, I mean, you know, my parents cried when I told them I was declaring fine arts as my major. I mean, literally, they didn't even know what to say or what to do. They were certain I would starve to death. Uh, I didn't care. I had to do what I had to do. I felt like it was something that I was uh, uh, good at because I'd been so propped up as a child at Heron. So very grateful.
Yeah.
Okay, hi there. This might be a little bit of a crossover from the last question, but and it's kind of a two-parter, maybe. But I feel like and I'm sorry, I'm not going to remember your first name, but I feel like trauma is often a jumping off point for creative expression. But so that's kind of part of the question, but I'm wondering if you all have moments when you were quite young where you just sort of thought, either I'm weird, I'm different, but really you thought you were creative. Like there was this, you couldn't frame it, but now in hindsight, you might be able to sort of look back and think, oh, that's why I was doing what I did. And, or if there's a specific thing that you created that stands out for you today.
I am totally drawing a blank on that. I
You
drew,
probably weren't a graphic designer like wannabe when you were tiny, but
not even close.
Yeah.
No, but I was like oil painting and things like that when I was like in third grade. My mom was really, she fostered what I did quite a lot, but she thought that I was better than her as a really young child as far as art goes. And so she found me like private lessons and things like that. But I did not do anything except for like replicate images. Like I would stare at the pictures and then just do that. I would draw Smurfs, lots of Smurfs. And I was so good at it.
Smurfs on big wheels.
What?
Smurfs on big wheels.
What? That's a great idea.
You're welcome.
I actually, all right. I had a Smurf on a big wheel. I actually, when I came to Heron, to get to the portfolio review, I think one of the instructors that was looking at my stuff was like, all your stuff is just copied. And I'm like, oh, man. So I left there feeling like I'm doomed. And then things just started changing after that. But I wasn't a creative person when I was a little kid. I was just weird.
We all know there's only like 7 original creative ideas anyway. So, I mean, come on, give yourself a break.
Thank you.
I'm still thinking about my answer. But my dad got I don't know, the associate version of a BFA, associate in fine or associates in printmaking from Cincinnati State. So from a really young age, just kind of, we were drawing. And then one day I was like, oh, I'm going to draw what's in front of me. I drew like this doll I had that was like a witch. And I drew it for my preschool teacher, Miss S. And I was like, I'm going to give this to her. My dad walked in and he didn't believe me that I drew it. And I wouldn't consider myself a good drawer, but I guess, at 4, your expectations are probably pretty low for what's good. He was like, oh, this is really good. He was like, do you want to like look more into this? And the Cincinnati Art Museum used to have like these after school programs for low income families that you can come in, drop off your kid for a few hours, and they would just like draw the paintings or sculptures in front of you. And I went to those quite a bit. And my teacher or the staff member who was working at the museum was really invested with me, but then time and scheduling kind of broke away for my parents, like, because both my parents were working like long hours all the time. So then I stopped going to those. And I didn't really pick up art back again until I was like, maybe like 15 or like 15, 14 years old. I got into like a really hard, like goth stage. And then I was like, oh, all of them are in the art classes. So I just started going to those. And like you would say, oh, I took a class because like there was someone I had a crush on was in the class. And then I just started investing more time in that. And I took 2 years off after high school. I did a gap year. I went back home to the Philippines and I worked there for a year for a magazine. I did a little bit like journalism that incorporated like politics and art and music. And then I was like, do I want to go into like an art practice or journalism? I thought about going into like astrophysics. And I didn't do any of those. Well, I went to art school. But yeah, I think like that's the main thing that triggered in my head when I was a kid was like that drawing I did of my toy witch. It was like a Halloween one. You pushed her stomach and she made a noise. And my dad was like, oh, this is like pretty good. Let's bring it to an art museum. And that was the first time I ever went to an art museum was when I was like 4 or 5 years old. And I was like, this is really cool. It's like people just do this and that's all they do. And then I stopped and then got back into it. But I wanted to be an actress when I was a kid. That was like my main goal. So it was kind of creative, but a little bit different than now. But I do video art sometimes. So I get to use that side a little bit.
I'll just briefly say that my family were prolific readers, and every single surface in our home, like side tables, dining room table, parts of the floor, whatever, were just stacked with newspapers, books, coffee cups, ashtrays. I mean, it was a mess. But everybody was deeply engaged in reading, and I just couldn't read. I didn't learn to read until I was in like about third grade. Something finally clicked in my brain because for fun, I started mirror writing backwards. And it's called decoding in the dyslexic world. Well, in my generation, nobody knew what that was. My creative renewal, no, not creative renewal, the Crystal DeHaan distinction thing, whatever, that I had a few years ago, I was able to actually go as an old person to the Dyslexic Institute of Indiana and take their tests. It was wild. I mean, I love my brain. I always thought my brain was fine. I thought a little differently than other people did, and I approached my visual world a little differently. But my parents were very supportive of me as a child in making anything I wanted artistically. So really, I was very tunnel visioned. I never wanted to be anything other than an artist. You know, I could speak to that though. You know, it took 5 years plus after going to art school before I had the guts to announce myself as an artist. You know, when you go to art school, you're learning to be very technically proficient with your materials. You're trying to learn to coordinate your eye, brain, hand, all of that, and mimic life, right? We've all talked about how, you know, as a kid, I copied cartoons, you know, just perfectly copied cartoons. But until you kind of cleave the meat off your bone and insert it into your art practice, so that it's individual and it's something that only you can say, then I think you can claim that, you know, that you're an artist. But just one quick story. My mother boiled a chicken and gathered all the bones and then helped me with super glue, put the entire skeleton back together. And that was a fun mom, you know, so. So she encouraged me to do anything I wanted to do with my little fingers, you know, so.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that interesting conversation. I think that was really nice. I don't know if we have enough time for any more questions. We want one more question? All right. Do we have one more question? Going once. Okay, here we go. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Question is for your gang leader. Where did you like to ride your big wheel so much
Where did I
when
like?
you were before you were a gang leader?
Okay, I can't hear anything.
Where did you like to ride your big wheel before you were a gang leader?
Around the block. Around the block. You know what? When I picked up the big wheel, the first from here, I was riding through the hallways on my way to my car. I totally felt like that little kid from The Shining. But yeah, we had I lived on like a circular street thing and I would just go around and around. I was a superhero back then. Mhm. Huh? I was just a badass. That's as far as I could go with that.
Well, thank you so much for your time and your insight. Really enjoyed this. And I have had a wonderful experience myself with interactive work and found as a youth that I found the performing arts in some ways to be more engaging than the objects I was making. And it was that ability to immerse people in those experiences that was so exciting to me. And I've seen each of you have talked about the experience. So I'm going to encourage you all to deeply immerse yourselves in the experience of their work and the other work you're going to experience tonight. There's some truly remarkable work. You get to join an audio conversation with colleagues from around the world. So if you can find that, go find that. It's a really special part of this evening. So thank you for being here. Please join us for the reception and please join us in visiting all three of the galleries. But thank you so much for being here. And thank you very much for your talk. Thank you.